Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something absolutely wild, the hidden ideologies of the secular world and the terrifying reality of what our sources call the automated empire. We're going to break down how systems that look completely neutral on the surface are actually governing our daily lives and, honestly, our entire future.
To kick things off, let's look at a massive pop culture moment. If you've seen the sci-fi classic Blade Runner, you definitely know this iconic monologue. But I want us to really ask ourselves a critical question about the systems running our reality right now when we look at a quote like this. Is a moment of profound human expression just some statistical fluke of nature? Or is it something much more?
Like, what if the secular world isn't actually neutral at all? What if it's actively competing to redefine what it literally means to be human? These are the exact questions being fiercely debated by the folks building our modern digital age. So to make sense of this massive geopolitical and philosophical shift, we've got to pull back the mask on this whole concept of the secular.
Which brings us to part 1, the mask of neutrality.
So, society generally just assumes the secular space is religiously neutral, right? But our sources are showing us a totally different angle. They argue it actually functions as an anti-theology. So rather than just being empty of theology, it's building this godless ideology that demands total submission, all while masquerading as just, plain objective reason.
This actually illustrates the concept perfectly. Think about the Force in Star Wars. It proclaims order and balance, and it feels a lot like a religion. But academics like Slavoj Žižek argue that if you really drill down, it functions exactly like modern global capitalism. It acts as this unanchored law, prioritizing order and meditative detachment, in a universe where a transcendent God deliberately doesn't exist. It's basically an ideological support mechanism.
The crucial takeaway here is that we're witnessing the triumph of logos over mythos. By hyper-focusing on logic, data, and pure mechanics, the secular world presents itself as this totally impartial baseline. But in doing that, it completely dismisses the deep meaning, the identity, and the shared sacred experience of human storytelling. It essentially claims a monopoly on reality itself. But hey, when we look a little closer at our modern digital age, we're seeing a fierce philosophical battle breaking out over this supposed neutrality. The mask is definitely slipping.
Let's move to part 2, Rise of the Antitheology.
We see this tension super clearly in an intense dispute detailed in our sources between sci-fi critic Damian Walter and systems architect Kyle McLean Smith. Walter analyzes the tech elite's secular ideologies, warning of this coming tech feudalism built purely on logic and data. Smith, on the flip side, views this secularism not as neutral at all, but as an active, parasitic capture of human liberty that we have to counter with digital sovereignty and prophetic vision.
But what's really fascinating here is what both of these guys actually agree on, the target of their critique. They both point directly at transhumanism, which is basically the pursuit of physical immortality and centralized biological engineering by tech billionaires like Peter Thiel. They see a system that believes biological life is just a transitional phase. Smith fiercely denounces the secular pursuit of earthly immortality as a complete religious subversion. He actually calls it an anti-Christian destroyer of the faith and a literal AI theology. And this brings us to a really profound turning point in this explainer. If there's no divine, what actually happens to humanity when it gets processed by this entirely secular machine?
That leads right into part 3, the bureaucratic soul. Let's jump back to that Blade Runner Tears in the Rain monologue for a second and see how this all connects. When analyzing that absolutely iconic cinematic moment, Walter dismisses it as just a mechanical, historically lucky fluke on a film set. But Smith? He aggressively defends it as literal Holy Spirit inspiration. So you've got this intense clash between secular mechanics and divine inspiration.
Now, you might be wondering, why does a debate over an old movie quote matter to you and me? Well, because treating a profound expression of the human soul as just some mere statistical accident is the exact ideological precursor to treating human beings as disposable data. Think about it. When you reduce the soul to a mechanical output, you strip the divine meaning right out of our existence. And this mechanical reduction of humanity paves the way for what we can accurately call the automated empire. So, let's take a look at the historical precedent for this.
Here's part 4, the automated empire. Historically, systems like the British East India Company used colonial courts with these rush trials to process human lives completely mechanically. These courts acted as tools of imperial discipline, dodging any individual moral responsibility entirely. It was essentially a bureaucracy that just processed human beings as numbers on a ledger.
Fast forward to today, and this Kafka-esque bureaucracy is fully digital. We're talking about automated platforms evaluating deep, prophetic human expression strictly through these sterile, secular community guidelines. It's the exact same bureaucratic processing from centuries ago, it's just operating at the speed of light now.
Notice the stark contrast here on the screen. A platform's algorithm flags intense, repetitive spiritual language as spam or trolling, simply because it deviates from normal conversational behavior. Meanwhile, the commenter actually intends it as a highly literate, prophetic proclamation. They're using it as a liturgical mantra to reclaim sacred meaning from secular spaces. The machine literally cannot comprehend the human soul, so it just filters it out.
And when tech giants hide behind the excuse of engineering scale to justify silencing this kind of expression, they're engaging in a classic bureaucratic evasion of responsibility. Our sources note that philosopher Hannah Arendt warned about this exact thing, that this kind of mechanical compliance and banality of evil is exactly what breeds totalitarian horror. It completely normalizes spiritual suppression.
To really wrap our heads around this invisible architecture of control, our sources provide a seriously chilling biological metaphor, the zombie ant fungus. This is a real parasite that controls its host's behavior peripherally. It invades the muscle fibers to move the ant around, but it deliberately leaves the brain totally intact.
Just as that fungus controls the ant's muscles while ignoring the brain, the automated empire hijacks the mechanics of society. It's just like the British Empire leaving local kings on their thrones, the brains, while taking absolute control of the peripheral muscles, like the military and the economy. It's a parasitic capture that forces the host to extract resources for the parasite's benefit, all while completely suppressing its internal voice. So, where exactly does this leave us? Well, we're currently standing at a massive geopolitical crossroads regarding the underlying architecture of our digital world. The sources actually call this the mechatronic fork.
Which brings us to part 5, the mechatronic fork.
Down one path is an opaque monoculture. This is the path of centralized surveillance, managed by state-level actors and a handful of tech billionaires, where the public is basically pacified by narrative storytelling. But down the other path is architect Kyle MacLean Smith's vision, FLOSS, free/libre open source software. This is a decentralized, mathematically grounded reality powered by totally auditable peer-to-peer code. He calls this defensive acceleration.
So the question is, which path of the mechatronic fork will society choose to walk down? According to our sources, we have to decide whether we'll just default to the opaque monoculture of the transhuman machine, or actively choose Smith's vision of an executable, decentralized architecture.
You've got to keep questioning the systems being built around you and pay very, very close attention to who is writing the rules, because the choices being coded into existence right now are going to define our future. The ultimate question our sources leave us with is this: as these digital systems grow more and more powerful, will they be programmed to recognize the divine spark of the human soul, or will we all just be processed as disposable data in the automated empire?